everybody, welcome back to part 9 of the Tamiya 132 scale Mosquito build. This time, as you can see, I've managed to build the starboard engine from the Tamiya kit, replacing the brassing one that I built earlier on in the series. And I've also moved ahead and built the undercarriage this week, so that's going to be the main focus of today's video. But that's all I'll be doing because a lot of the week's been taken up obviously building that other engine and getting the starboard nacelle sorted out so that I could do the undercarriage. So we're going to start off this week by getting the parts out for the undercarriage from the Tamiya kit and building these lower undercarriage legs, which need a bit of modification for the version that I'm doing. So I'll bring the camera over and you can see how I got those together. Okay, so while I'm building the starboard engine from the Tamiya kit this week, I'm going to be getting the undercarriage ready so that hopefully at the end of this video I'll be fitting the starboard nacelle and the undercarriage. And if I've got time, I'll also build the tail wheel unit as well, just so that we can get the aeroplane up on its legs. These are the lower undercarriage legs. The upper are already on the aeroplane here as part of the engine bay bulkhead assembly. So it gives a nice solid fixing for the undercarriage. Because this aeroplane, when it's finished, the model when it's finished, it'll be fairly heavy, so it needs a fairly substantial undercarriage assembly. These parts need some careful cleanup. They've got one or two sprue gate attachments on them that if we don't get them cleared up, it will interfere with the fit of the parts. These frames on the undercarriage legs have to be modified for the version that I'm doing, and Tamiya just call that out in the instructions. So just have to be careful to get the right piece removed. So basically we just remove the top part of the frame just to leave this shape. I'm just going to get rid of this paint. I've been doing another project and this is clear red that I've got on my fingers. It's a bit off-putting, so I'll just go get rid of that. Slightly better. These parts are very delicate, so you just need to be careful when cleaning the sprue gates off them. Be easy to break them. It does take a little bit of working out to see where these parts fit, but just pay careful attention to the instructions, and they do fit perfectly as usual in the Tamiya kit. That actually all goes together fairly well. I'll just do the other one a bit closer up. These parts are quite difficult to modify really. and it would have been better really if Tamiya had have offered alternative leg parts altogether rather than trying to trim off these very thin little struts or frames, because it's not easy to do that, and it is quite likely that you could break off the part that you've got to retain. So you do have to take care with this. So that's how this should look. So that's quite a tricky little modification that Tamiya want us to do to get the legs correct for the version that we're doing. So that's the first stage, and hopefully it gets a bit easier from there. That was quite tricky to get these very thin and delicate undercarriage frames, to get them modified, cut the bits off that you don't need for the version that you're doing, and get them put together. So anyway, that's the first step out of the way. The next thing I'm going to take a look at are the wheels. Now I've got a set of brass-in wheels which came in the second brass-in set that I'm working with, but I'll also make up the Tamiya wheels. They're very interesting the way the Tamiya wheels go together. Just put the tail wheel back. Get these wheels off the blocks, and I'll use the cutting disc for that off camera. Those are the brass-in hubs, and you can see that actually there's a gap all the way around the outside. I sometimes think that resin shrinks a little bit and leads to that sort of problem. So that's a bit disappointing. I've had this before with brass-in wheels, that the hubs leave a gap around the outside. It's actually not too obvious once you get the wheel painted. It's just a nuisance really that happens. So it's the same with all of them, unfortunately. So there's a couple of things you can do. You could just ignore it, and as I said, once you've painted the wheel in a dark colour, you won't really notice that too much. The alternative is to assemble them permanently and fill the gap, smooth it out, and then just paint the whole thing using the paint masks. But it would have been nice to just get a little better fit of those. I will put one of the Tamiya wheels together just to show you the way that Tamiya have designed these, which is quite clever really. And they're designed in such a way that you don't have any seam lines to clear up on the tread. These are all the separate tread parts. So let's just see how they go together. I'm just seeing if it's possible to assemble these sidewalls incorrectly, because obviously there's a flat on the bottom of the inner tyre and a bulge at the bottom of the sidewall. But Tamiya have moulded these pips in such a way that you can't put them upside down, so they'll only go in one way. And on the outside of the tread, so these separate parts, the actual location points are all different shapes, so you're not going to be able to get those mixed up either. So I'll start at the bottom with the flat. There are one or two gaps around these treads. That's maybe because I've not cleaned them up as well as I could have done. But it's just to give you an idea. I'm actually going to use the brass-in parts because they've got the sidewall detail, the logos and so on, the tyre manufacturer on the side, and they're absent from the Tamiya kit. And the hub detail's a bit better on the brass-in ones as well. So we'll see how we go with those. That's a really clever idea, the way those go together. This is a jig to locate the tops of the legs. Just spaces them apart the correct distance. And there are also some keys on the axle points here, just to make sure everything lines up. The jig is there to enable us to fit some cross braces at the correct distance, hold everything securely in place until those cross braces dry. And of course we've got the two brass-in wheels. The next step is to work out how to put together the retraction arms. So again, we'll get all these parts cut off, cleaned up, and we'll see if we can work out how they go together as well. This is the mudguard for the main wheels. The mudguards are actually provided in brass in the Edwards set that I've got, but I've looked at those and I don't think they're going to look as nice as the Tamiya plastic parts when it's all done. The braces here, these parts that I'm cleaning up now, are very thin in the Edwards set, and I just don't think they'd look right, so I'm going to stick with the Tamiya parts. So that's one of the retraction arms. obviously I'll have to do the other one for the other side. Just a quick note about these undercarriage assemblies, because I just need to point out that this isn't the way that Tamiya would have us build these. The way that Tamiya do it is to just assemble the lower undercarriage legs, which are these parts, onto the nacelle assembly that we've seen earlier on. And then once that's in place, fit these retraction jacks. But I wanted to assemble them as a whole so that I could paint them in one piece. And you're not able to do that with the Tamiya method of assembly, because the brake lines here are separate parts and they go over the retraction jack here at this point where it connects to the leg. So the way that Tamiya do it would have you gluing lots of pre-painted parts together later on, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get as much assembly done as possible, get it all painted so that it would just fit together as one. But obviously we've got to make sure that this is all orientated properly, so the best way I've found to do that, or the way I've done it, is to just dry assemble the lower undercarriage legs here, dry assemble the retraction jacks into the undercarriage bay, and lock the connection point here with some quick setting glue. And I've just left that to set up, and then what I can do now is just carefully remove the whole assembly . And as you can see, it comes out in one piece. But before I do any more with that, I'll just add a bit of security back into the assembly by putting that jig back, and that will just hold everything together. The wheel will pop out. It's just possible to splay the undercarriage legs a little bit. And that's quite a solid assembly really. And once that's come out, I can then apply the brake lines, which are these pieces. As you can see, they go over the location point here, so it's not possible to put these brake lines on first and then the retraction mechanism. So that's a complete assembly, ready for some primer, and we'll get them both painted up. Okay, so that's all primed, ready for some paint, and building them like this just means that I can just apply the silver colour, which is going to be duralumine, to the whole assembly rather than painting individual parts and then risking just getting glue spots and stuff on the assembly when you're putting them together. So I just find it a neater way, but you've just got to make sure that you're able to assemble this whole part into the nacelle, and I know that we can do that, so it's a safe method, but just check it out if it's something that you're going to do yourself if you're building the kit. I've also sorted out the brassing wheels, so I've glued the hubs into position and just applied some Mr. Surfacer 500, and that's just sealed that very small gap around the hub that we had. So I'll just put the other hub into position, and they do have keys on these, on the brassing ones, so I just need to be careful to get them the right way, orientated properly. This is Mr. Surfacer 500. You can put it on fairly liberally, just to fill that gap, and I'm going to wipe the excess away with some lacquer thinner. Just a quick clean up, just to smooth it all out and get rid of any excess that we don't want. So they're nice and cleaned up. I'll just give those an overall coat now of Mr. Surface of some 1500 just to get them ready for some paint. There's some lovely detail on that the primer brings out, so they should look nice when they're all painted up. These undercarriage legs have now had a coat of Vallejo Duralium in, and I've just given them a very light pin wash with the panel line accent colour Tamiya, and there are just a couple of decals to fit on the mudguard here at the back. I don't really know what these are that Tamiya asked us to paint these bits of detail on the leg in flat brown. I don't know what they could be. There may be some sort of bumper for when the leg retracted. But apart from that, I've no idea. Right, time to fit the undercarriage legs now, and you can see I've already done the port side. They're okay to go in, they're a reasonable fit, and they're a nice secure fit thanks to these very large rods on the bulkhead here. So there's quite a lot of strength in the undercarriage, and as I mentioned earlier on, it needs to have, because it's a fairly heavy model when completed. First thing to do is to remember to remove the jig. And we need to get the retraction arms and the supports inside the wheel well first, and then just drop the lower undercarriage sleeves down. And you just need to maneuver the stays at the back. And the actual retraction jack as well, just get them roughly into position. And just before I push these fully home, I'll just put a tiny drop of quick setting glue, push it home, just need to hold on to that. And again, a bit more of the thin glue, the quick setting variety, just to push that back stay in. These cross braces are a little bit fiddly to get in, but they do fit perfectly when you've got them in the right position. I'm not gluing the top part here until I've got the wheels in, and that's just in case I have to open the legs up a little bit. So I'll leave those loose down at the bottom. So the last thing to do is to paint the wheels. They're all primed, as you can see. So we'll get those done, and at that point, once they're installed, we can fit the last of the brake lines. So the first step for me painting aircraft wheels is to just do the tyres in some rubber black on the sidewalls, and then I just go around the tread area with some plain matte black. That's just to indicate where down to fresh rubber on the tread area, whereas the sidewalls remain slightly faded. And I'm going to add to the detail on this, or bring the detail out, by doing some dry brushing with a lighter grey. So the overall effect will be of an off black or a very dark grey tyre overall. Now, I won't be using any sort of mud effects on these tyres or on the undercarriage, because this aircraft from 487 Squadron operated from an airfield in Hertfordshire in England, just north of London, called RAF Hunsdon. Hunsdon was a concrete runway airfield and concrete stand-ins as well. So the aircraft won't have operated on grass at all. I think probably a Mosquito would have been fairly heavy to operate from grass. But Hunsdon was definitely a concrete runway and stand-in airfield. So we're not going to have a lot of mud effects on these tyres. So the dry brushing in the grey should bring out the detail that we need without over-dirtying them. I'm just resting the tyres on this foam just to protect the surface finish on them. And obviously you lose sight of them on the camera, but I'll do the dry brushing over the blue, so hopefully you'll be able to see what's going on. So I'm going to do the dry brushing in stages, and I'll start off by using a German grey, which is a very dark grey colour. And if I need to do any more, I'll just lighten it up a little bit gradually until I get the effect that I'm after. So very, very gently does it. I don't want any spots on this, just pure dry brushing, so there's hardly any paint on this brush. This German grey is probably going to be enough, actually. It's lightened it just as I like it, really. Brought the sidewall lettering out. So I'm going to carry on with this now. It's going to take quite a while because you don't want to rush into this and get it to the state where you're putting too much paint on. So it does take a while to get it to the effect that you're after. So I'll carry on working on this on both tyres and the tail wheel, and then we'll go to the next step. I'm just going a bit lighter now with some neutral grey, but I've got to be very, very careful with this. It could overdo it a little bit, so I just want to try it out very gently and gradually. So I'm just doing this on the very centre of the tread, just to indicate some wear on the tread itself. And it just gives a bit of variation as well to the wheel, rather than it just being silver and black. It's just got some interesting colours in it, even though they are just grey. So that's as much as I want to do on those. I don't want to overdo it. They're just nicely scuffed up. So I'll get the hubs masked off. There are some ready cut, die cut masks in the brassing set. So we'll get those out and we'll get the hubs painted up. I don't know what's going on with these masks, but they don't fit. They're miles too big for the wheel. I don't know how difficult it is to cut a mask out for a manufacturer, but they're no use at all. So I'll have to cut my own. I'm masking the whole wheel off. I don't want to get any silver overspray onto the tyres that I've just painted, so it's just worth spending a bit of time getting them fully sealed up. Okay, so see how we did. This is obviously very bright. I'm going to be dulling this down with a bit of a wash. Get some dirt into it. So a little bit of touching up here and there, but nothing too much. So I'll get the other wheels done and then we'll get the weathering wash on those hubs. Just adding a little bit more wash onto these, and this time I'm using some dark brown. Just tidy up around the hubs a little bit with just a drop of the rubber black. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with those. I think they've come out okay. The hubs aren't too bright, so I'll get the main wheels fitted onto the undercarriage, and I'll just put the tail wheel aside for the moment. So I'll get the axle put in. This is just a steel rod from the Tamiya kit. Now the only thing to do to these now is to fit the lower part of the brake line. So connecting the bottom of the brake line here with the hub. But I'm not going to fit that yet because I want to make sure that the flats on the wheels are obviously on the ground, and that will orientate the wheel in the correct position before I actually glue the brake line onto the hub. So we're going to have to wait to do that until the wing is fitted onto the aeroplane. But I'm not going to be able to do that in this episode, so we'll leave it there for this week. I didn't get as far as I wanted to again because I wanted really to get the wing fitted to the fuselage and the tail wheel fitted as well. But we'll do that in the next couple of days. But I'll get all that done in the next day or two, and I'll publish that actually probably as an extra video midweek, just to show you that assembly altogether, just a short video, just as a supplement really to this one. Okay, so that's it for this week. I've gone as far as I can for this particular video, but as you can see, the wings are at a stage now where they can be fitted to the fuselage. I've not done that permanently yet. I've got to do some work to get the mounting screws sorted out before I permanently fix the wings into place. But there's not a lot to do now before I can finish the tail wheel assembly and hopefully get this aeroplane standing on all three wheels. So with the wings ready to fit to the fuselage, we can start to see the shape of the aeroplane now and get an impression of the overall size of the model. So I'm going to be doing that work over the next couple of days, and then I'll be able to move on to the next stage of the assembly. That'll be building the 20mm gun pack, which is in the underside of the aeroplane. So a couple of updates coming out in the next week, the second of which I'll be publishing as usual on Friday night at 8 o'clock as a premiere. So I hope to see you then, everybody. In the meantime, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.